We have lots to talk about in today's video, including the latest trade talk around teams like the Ottawa Senators, the Edmonton Oilers, and the Vancouver Canucks. We have lots of UFA speculation as well involving the Toronto Maple Leafs potentially targeting a couple top defensemen, plus, of course, the Stanley Cup might come out tonight. Game 4 goes between the Oilers and Panthers. We'll take a quick look at that, as well as some other news around the league, including the Maple Leafs firing Guy Boucher, assistant coach. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about today. Let's get started first with just having a quick chat on Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final. The puck drop is about an hour away from the time I record this video. The video likely won't make it to YouTube till a little bit later in the evening. So, so we'll see what happens. Of course, if the Cup comes out tonight, I'll probably do another video recapping that. But at the same time, the Oilers are in tough here, down 3-0 at home to the Panthers. The Panthers trying to win the first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Not expecting any lineup changes tonight. I do expect the Oilers to have a shuffling of the lines at the very least, though. We will see. I mean, it's do or die. Season's on the line. So I would expect them to have their best game of the series, best effort. Not that the effort hasn't been there. It's been really good, actually. Just the Panthers have been really, really good defensively. They do a real good job of winning the board battles. They clog up the neutral zone real well. But the problem is that when the Oilers do break through, and they've done it enough, that Bobrovsky is the brick wall that stops them and doesn't give up much. So we still have Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, and Boucher do not have a goal in this series. That's a major problem. So that definitely has to change tonight if there's going to be any success for the Oilers to extend the series. The power play has to come through. I don't think they'll be getting a lot of opportunities, but the one or two that they get, they got to cash in, and we will see. Florida likely going to be doing the same thing, same game plan, same lineup. And could it be Stanley's night? We'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I personally, selfishly, always want more hockey. So I hope the Oilers can extend it. But we will have to find out. A sweep in the finals, really not a lot of fun. Unless you're the winning team, then you don't care. But otherwise, let's hope it keeps going. Lots of other talk around the league today, including a variety of things. Let's first start with an update on a signing we talked about yesterday. Former Ottawa Senator Jerard Fagerberg, who was a brief Ottawa Senator for 1 year. Was a European UFA signing for them last offseason. Came over, looked like he could be a big body, bottom six forward with a little bit of offense. They took a chance on him, which was good to see. At the same time, he only got about 20 games in the NHL, not much offense at all. Even played a bottom six role in Belleville. Not to say that they didn't like aspects of his game. He wasn't a bad player, but at the same time, I think they were hoping for a bit more offense. But defensively, he was sound, and we'll see. But he had signed in Czechia, which was the news. It sounded like his time in the NHL was done. But apparently that may not be the case. We learn now that there's a clause in his contract that allows him to negotiate with NHL teams during the free agent period in July. And if he's able to get an NHL contract that he likes better, then he can be released and head back to North America. So there is that. And I suspect that the team he signed with in Czechia would likely hold his rights over there. And, he might even try to get a European out clause or something. I'm not sure. Or if he gets released or terminated, or that happens a lot. You get European players come over if they're not liking their role and they decide they want to head home. Sometimes you see the contract just terminated. But at the end of the day, Schmeichel's time in the NHL might not be done. So we'll see. We'll have to wait for further updates there. Couple updates on the Toronto Maple Leafs behind the bench and in the front office. Lawrence Gilman, who was an AGM with the Leafs, has parted ways with the franchise. Apparently that happened a couple of days ago. I just never saw the news on that. His contract had been expiring June 30th, and they were not going to be renewing it. And they've also parted ways with assistant coach Guy Boucher, who's certainly well known for his rest as a weapon phrase from his time as Ottawa Senators head coach. But Guy Boucher not with the Leafs any longer. He was their power play coach last year, and to be honest, the power play it wasn't horrible by any means, but it certainly, especially during critical times, was not as effective as you would think it should be with the amount of talent they can put out there. So obviously he was under Sheldon Keefe's staff. With Keefe gone, certainly some more changes to to the Maple Leafs bench with Craig Berube now calling the shots, being the head coach there. So Guy Boucher effectively has been fired by the Maple Leafs, will not be returning to be their power play coach. Signing in Montreal today as well. Montreal Canadiens have signed prospect Oliver Kapanen. He was drafted a few years back in 2021. He was taken with the 64th overall pick and now gets his 3-year entry-level contract. He's now 20 years old, going on 21. He's been obviously playing over in Europe. He represented his country of Finland in the most recent World Championships, led them with 6 goals in 8 games. Looks like he's made decent progress and developments and is hopefully ready to make the jump to North America and get into the Habs system. So we will see what he can accomplish. And, there was some high hopes for him when he was drafted. So we'll see. Of course, I know the name Kapanen, I'm sure quite familiar to many of you. He is related to Kasperi Kapanen. They are cousins. They are not brothers, contrary to what I've seen some people say online. The Ottawa Senators today have re-signed their Belleville Senators head coach for the American Hockey League, David Bell. There was some talk and speculation that even though Bell's done a pretty good job and led them to their first playoff appearance in a while, and not only that, they won a round, made it to the second round, and second round I think they lost in the final game in overtime, if I'm not mistaken, against the Cleveland Monsters. So they had a good run. They had a real good season, saw good development out of the kids down there, and then they made the playoffs and had some success. So certainly it wouldn't have been because he didn't do a good job if he wasn't retained. But with new ownership in the organization, there was a lot of talk and speculation that, they obviously might want to bring their own people in. Certainly there was some talk about like Jay McKee, for example, who coached for Staios and Lauer in junior, and certainly would be a great option to move up into the NHL, AHL ranks and, what have you. But at the same time, they were obviously happy with Bell's job and couldn't justify moving on from him. So he gets a 2-year extension to remain head coach down there in Belleville. Another signing to discuss as well, the Philadelphia Flyers of a European free agent signing, Rodrigo Abols. I think that's how you pronounce it, Abols. He's Latvian. He gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, 28 years old. Played in the SHL this past year, put up 26 points in 50 games. He's a 6'4", 205-pound forward. So, like we talked about with Yuri Shea being the European free agent signing to the Sens last year, similar type build, similar type stats. So I don't know if he'll be any better or any more offensive. But Schmeichel, like him, has also got the big size. He's a big body. Obviously he's an older, more mature UFA coming from Europe. We'll see if Rodrigo works out any better for the Flyers here. But he was originally drafted by the Canucks back in 2016, but never signed and never came over. So at the same time, he's now been a UFA playing in Europe for quite some time. Onto the trade rumor front. All kinds of things to talk about here today, as well as some UFA talk too. The Vancouver Canucks, according to Frank Saravalli, we know they're a very busy team. They got a lot of things on the go. Clearly have all kinds of players that are on expiring deals, and it's not looking promising to keep a lot of them. A lot of the Canucks, like for them to have the season they had, a lot of things had to go right, and a lot of things had to have, make your best case scenario. Which, not saying they wouldn't have been a good team anyways, but I think what allowed them to be even better than people expected was a lot of that. And on the moves they made throughout the year paid off and were good moves too. They're definitely going to be a bit of a different looking team next year. That seems pretty apparent. We know that Lindholm, Zadorov are going to be tough, almost impossible to retain. I still have a little bit of hope that they figure out Zadorov, but Lindholm I think is pretty much gone for sure. Zadorov, I'll give a little bit of hope. Dakota Joshua, there's a little bit of hope, but probably not. I think he's probably going to get more money elsewhere. But another name that they're trying to clear space on to figure things out and to have more flexibility is Ilya Mikheyev. Mikheyev is a player who has not worked out. Of course, he came over as a UFA signing, formerly of the Toronto Maple Leafs, known for his speed, penalty killing, and obviously, decent offensively. It looked like he should have been, based on how he played in Toronto, a pretty decent middle six kind of player, like a guy who you typically would put on your third line, but when necessary, capable of filling in on the first or second line. Maybe not all, regularly, but like if you run into an injury or somebody's really struggling cold, you need to shake things up, you can bump him up. He's got some talent, but he did suffer a pretty significant knee injury, and just hasn't been quite the same since. He looks like he's lost a bit of a step. So the Canucks are trying to trade him. There still has a couple years left on his contract, over $4 million, and certainly not a contract they're any longer fond of, you could say. And according to Frank Saravalli, not only are they trying to trade him, but teams are saying to them that they will take the contract. There is interest in the player, but they want a sweetener. So it's not a player they can even just give away for future considerations. They actually want something in return. So it may cost them a draft pick or a prospect or something else that have to be included. It didn't mention specifically, what teams might take Mikheyev. Obviously, it'd have to be teams that have more cap space to play around with. I don't know that any of the top teams that are, looking at like the top 15, 16 teams in the league that were playoff teams this year, if they would want to bring in a player like this, but certainly look at some of the teams that might be trying to work their way up and, either get a kind of a free player, so to speak, or, a rebuilding team that needs some veterans around. You're looking at the Hawks, the Sharks, the Jackets, or, any of those other teams, but hard to say who exactly. But yeah, it looks like for them to move him, a sweetener is going to be necessary. Another talk too is there's a lot of people speculating, especially where we said, and we will find out later tonight. Tonight could be the end of the NHL's 23-24 season. The Stanley Cup could be awarded if the Florida Panthers beat the Edmonton Oilers in Game 4 this evening. And some people are questioning, I've seen it out there a lot, is this the end of the road for Leon Draisaitl with the Oilers? Because Draisaitl is in the and will be entering the final year of his contract come July 1st. And obviously, salary cap's tough to navigate. He's going to be looking for a significant raise on his next deal. Obviously, like when he first signed the deal he's got now, over $8 million. A lot of people thought it was a huge overpay. Now it's very friendly, and it's about to go up. Certainly a fair bit. So, can they retain all of these players? And the other question was, a lot of it was going to be boiled down to their season. And of course, we don't know how this is going to go yet because Game 4 hasn't been played out. And, for them to come back 3-0 down to win the Cup would be, miraculous in a sense, because statistically and historically speaking, it's almost impossible. So it doesn't mean it won't happen, but the odds are stacked big time against them. So not many people are expecting it. I'm sure they are, but otherwise, not too many other people are. Oilers fans, I'm sure, are holding out hope. But, is this the end for Leon? And the answer is, I really think absolutely not. Very unlikely. I know Frank Saravalli was talking about the Oilers today too, and he said that, which makes sense to me, that with Leon getting ready to enter the final year of his deal, that even though they've been in this long playoff run and making to the Stanley Cup final and everything that's going on, that there has been some preliminary talks with the Oilers, with his agent, and that they certainly have every intention, meaning Leon and his agent, of wanting to extend in Edmonton. Now, could negotiations go awry? Could things ever hit a snag? You never know. It's always possible. But the intention, according to Saravalli, is for Leon to want big term and big money to stay in Edmonton. Now, you're probably looking at something similar to the Matthews money, but keep in mind Matthews didn't sign for 8 years. Matthews has been doing those 4-year contracts. So, essentially, he might get similar money to Matthews, but over twice the period of time. Term-wise. Not necessarily the total money, but per year. So, in that $14 million range. Which really, based on what he's done, he's a proven 50-goal scorer, 100-point guy, done it numerous times, is usually always top 5 scoring. He can justify asking for the absolute top dollar. And for a short term, might even become the league's highest paid player. It's remotely possible. Of course, not long into the future after that, they're going to have to extend McDavid and Boucher. And belief is that McDavid's probably going to be looking at somewhere around that $16 million range, and Boucher probably around 10. And obviously, they're the 3 main key cogs in that offensive weapon that they have there in Edmonton that scores most of the goals. Your other parts are going to be a little bit easier if you do lose one here or there, interchangeable. But those are your 3 main pieces that you want to sign long term. And, obviously it's a lot of money. We've seen other teams be very cap heavy in certain number of players. but at least the cap's rising, and it's not all one position. You got your top 2 center and your top D, which is arguably your, besides the goaltender, which, is your most important spots in having a deep roster to win a cup. And obviously, even if the Oilers don't win a cup, they're awfully darn close. So there's lots to like about how that roster is constructed and how they can continue to try to win over the next number of years. So fully expect Leon to extend them with a massive extension this summer. And, he will hear from, like I said, in the not too distant future when they're eligible for McDavid and Boucher to do the same. Now, according to other reports, the Maple Leafs are looking at some big names on the UFA market. That's assuming these names actually hit free agency, because you never know. There's time for them to re-sign. We know that Brad Treliving as a GM, his whole belief system the entire time we've seen him be a GM, and even especially through his tenure with Calgary, and what we've heard him say in Toronto, and a little bit of what he's done, is that he likes to build from the back end out, which makes a lot of sense. So targeting a couple of top defenders to really rejig this blue line this year would probably make a lot of sense. Now, we know all the whole Marner stuff, and there's a lot of uncertainty in what they're going to do. I do expect something big to happen in Toronto, but we don't know, and we don't have any new intel on that today. But they are apparently looking hard at guys like Chris Tanev and Brandon Montour in free agency. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to get them. Obviously, we know Florida is going to be trying to keep Montour. We know Dallas is interested in keeping Chris Tanev. I do think both players at this point, considering how close we are, most likely will make it to free agency, just so they can at least kind of open the door and have a peek and see what's out there. So it doesn't mean that the Leafs are going to obviously get either of these guys, but I'm sure that based on their where they're at in their careers and everything, I think they would at least talk to them. I'm sure, especially if Florida wins the Stanley Cup, which is what it's looking like now, you would think Montour's first choice would be to want to remain in Florida, and obviously they will have an advantage there to be able to sign him with a little bit less money, given the no state tax and a bit of a team-friendly discount. They can also offer an 8th year, which other teams can't do. So we will see. Obviously, they have some important pieces there that are on expiring deals, and it's going to be tough for the Panthers to retain all their top guys. So we will see, but expect the Leafs to be hard after those 2 defensemen. They're going to have lots of competition, though. Lots of teams will be interested in those top 2 guys, especially with their right shot, and play a different style, though, so it depends on what you're looking for. The Sens are reportedly also in a ton of trade talk. There's some rumors out there that they are quite far down the road in a lot of conversations. I don't know when is the earliest we could see some maneuvering here. I would think, obviously, I know the NHL and Gary Bettman kind of prefers a lot of this stuff to take place after the Stanley Cup final, because they don't want to, they want to keep all the eyes and attention on those games. But there's been some talk that they're quite far down the road with a team like the Flyers, and then it most likely involves Jacob Chychrun. Again, I don't know. It's hard to say how far down they are, and how reliable some of these rumors are. Some of them are, like I said, they're always interesting to think about, talk about, and I always try to get my stuff from reliable sources. But at the same time, not everything comes to fruition. We know that. Just because teams are talking doesn't mean it's going to happen. So what could they be discussing for a return is the big question. And you got to look at a couple of things. I would think that if the Sens are trading Chychrun, they're going to want a right shot defenseman. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to have to come from this deal. But the thing is they would prefer to have, rather than have Chychrun, I think they'd rather have a right shot D who's a strong two-way D. Not only half decent offensively, but they really need solid partners for Sanderson and Shabbat. On the right side, they have Artem Zub, who's pretty good. They need another one to really complement Shabbat. And then you can have your third pair where you can get some more size back there. So if they would be probably in the same type of thing as the Leafs. Look, they've been linked to Tanev too. So at the end of the day, if they're trading Chychrun, they're going to want a right shot D, but it doesn't have to come from that deal. But they're also going to be looking for a top 6 forward. The Flyers would have that. Travis Konechny and Joel Farabee come to mind. Guys who are, Konechny needs a new deal. He's got ties to Ottawa. Farabey's a guy also would be quite familiar of being an American-born player. The Sens have a ton of American-born talent, players that he would have played with going up through the U.S. NDP program and stuff. So, like, you know, there's good familiarity, I think, with both guys in different aspects. And it could both be a fit. And, of course, Claude Giroux, former Flyer, would know connecting quite well. You know, I'm sure if they're going to make a deal with the Flyers and anybody who's been there a while, I would not be shocked if they ask for his opinion. Doesn't mean he's going to have a say in it, but just to get an idea for character, how he fits in the room, like those types of things. So we'll see. You know, either one of those guys have a lot of talent. And, you know, could the Sens be sending Chychrun to Philly for one of those guys? I mean, I know another guy that they do really like as a prospect is Oliver Bonk. Obviously, the connection with his dad being a former senator, but doesn't mean he would necessarily be included. But at the same time, it's, you know, I think for Sens fans, it's kind of nostalgic and fun to think about. But at the same time, I mean, there is deals there that make sense for both sides. So we will see if the Flyers and Sens end up connecting here after all. Let me know your thoughts on all today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.